Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Odds and Ends, your bet.NOLA.com Monday weekend recap show for sports betting, brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And I'm alongside Jim Derry and Devin Jackson. We're here to talk the weekend that was. My pocketbook is a little bit lighter after the weekend. I think you guys fared a little better than I did, but I don't know if it was such a surprising weekend or if it was a weekend of real slim margins. It was a good weekend for your teasers, Jim. A lot of these games came right down on either side of the spread.
They had to hit eventually, right? Keep trying. I'm stubborn. That German in me was coming out. It was a weekend of some bad beats too, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. But it was just a strange overall weekend, and especially in college football, we had some weird moments. But stay classy in Knoxville. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun if you were sitting at home watching. No, I don't think it was too much fun to be in Neyland Stadium having stuff thrown at you, but that was wild. And Tennessee almost still won the game. That was the crazy part, is they probably could have had a touchdown pass go through a receiver's fingers after that big delay and lost the game. So, Devin, what were your impressions from the weekend?
Well, first of all, the hometown LSU stunned everybody and pretty much just ran right at Florida all day long. And then
this guy
had some more big news drop yesterday, so I'm sure we'll talk about that in just a minute. But we knew Orgeron was probably gone after the season, but it was just the timing after that Florida win, which makes sense, but at the same time, definitely shook up the college football. Everyone else outside of the bubble of LSU, I felt like, so didn't see that coming. But yeah, it was a writing on the wall.
I can't remember where I read this, but somebody made a pretty good point that one of the reasons LSU may have made the move now, and they came to this agreement with Orgeron before the Florida game, but one of the reasons they did it was just in case he did get hot and win 5 out of 6. And then it was like, oh, well, maybe we better keep him. And they wanted to avoid being in that limbo. Let's make the agreement now. He's going to be done at the end of the year. And then, what happens the rest of the season happens. And if they win some games, great, good for Coach O. If not, we've already decided we're making the move. So we will most definitely talk about that and what's next for LSU. But first, let's take a look at the college football results from Saturday. There's that LSU game, 49-42 over Florida. So the best bet of the day, I guess, was LSU money line, but the over was also an easy winner there with Ty Davis Price just going nuts, setting the school record for rushing yards. Another underdog winning outright, Oklahoma State beating Texas. Oklahoma State still undefeated, and we'll talk about this later, but they're an underdog again this week. Cincinnati keeps rolling along. They were big favorites and covered easily. Auburn wins as an outright underdog at Arkansas. And then we talked about the Ole Miss-Tennessee game and the other one there, Georgia-Kentucky. Jim, you and I were talking about this. That was really the bad beat of the weekend in college football.
Really was. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't the only one sitting in front of the TV going, no, just stop him. I mean, that last touchdown, I mean, I get why Kentucky was trying to score. They can use it for later and all that stuff. But, man, that one hurt for sure. That was my only loss of Saturday. LSU is just such a mixed bag. It's so hard to figure them out at times. I mean, I thought they would come out and play well. Like I said, when you hold a Cajun up against the wall with your hand around his neck, he's going to fight. So it didn't surprise me that they covered at all. But anyone who thought LSU would put up 49 points, you're lying if you said you thought that would happen.
And the way they did it, too, with the running game, as Devin mentioned. I mean,
exactly.
They just ran it right down their throat. Just to set the scene on that Kentucky game, for those who didn't see it, to explain what I'm talking about. So you see there, Georgia was 21.5-point favorite. Georgia controlled the game like they usually do. I don't think it was 21-0 right off the bat or anything like that, but they had a 21-point lead most of the first half, and then they raised it up. It was 30-7 for most of the fourth quarter, so they're covering. Kentucky gets the ball back with like 7 minutes left, starts this slow slog down the field. Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler on CBS are even mentioning it, like, hey, why aren't they hurrying up? And at one point, Danielson says, if they were down 10 points or 14 points and they were in a situation where if they score, they can try an onside kick, get the ball back, and maybe they can win. That's one thing, but they're just trying to save face right now. So just let them do what they do. So they're slogging down the field. They converted a couple of fourth downs. They get a couple of penalties. I mean, it's pretty obvious they want to score one more time. And it's also obvious Georgia wants to stop them. They get all the way down inside the 10, and Georgia stops them. There's less than 10 seconds left, and the clock's running. And you go, if you're a Georgia bettor, I survived. Okay. I'm going to hang on by the skin of my teeth. Nope. Here comes Mark Stoops. Give me that TO. Timeout, baby. Timeout. 3 seconds left. No, what are you doing? And this is where people who don't want to talk about sports without talking about gambling, like I get into them. CBS ran a commercial right there. You think anybody is sitting through that freaking commercial except for bettors at that point? But everybody who had money on the game is going to sit through that 2.5-minute commercial to see what happens on the last play of the game, because if Kentucky scores a touchdown, I was afraid they were going to come back and kick a field goal just to stick it in the eye of Georgia bettors.
Zach, I got to tell you too, I'm really not a conspiracy theorist or one of these things, but it was a play that no one's talking about that completely affected this game. I can't remember whether it was first and goal or second and goal. Quarterback fumbles football. It was clearly a fumble, and Georgia recovered. And they said no fumble, and there's no review because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It only matters for the point spread. But it should have been a turnover. I mean, it was clearly a fumble. And it was clearly recovered by Georgia, and that should have been the end of it. And they didn't review it. They didn't talk about it. It never got talked about again. But those are the things that make you go, just a little bit. And it affects.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, it affected. The thing is, though, the proliferation of sports betting nationwide and how it's permeating national media more and more, that's going to stop. I mean, there will be reviews on those plays because it does matter. It matters to, again, except for diehard Georgia fans, maybe diehard Kentucky fans, who's watching that game at that point? It's people who have money on the game. That's it. Devin, what was your pick in that game?
They should have reviewed that. They should have.
Yeah, well, I just looked it up. It was a 22-play, 75-yard drive that was 11 minutes and 23 seconds.
Like, come on. You got just one stop, guys. Best defense in the country.
Has to be one of the longest drives ever in sports. I've never seen more than like a 17, 18-play drive.
And I mean, there were penalties, and like Jim said, there was this fumble that wasn't reviewed, and they're getting first downs on fourth down by a yard or two, and they converted a 4th and 14 or something. I mean, like, you're just pulling your hair out. And I had a bad day Saturday anyway, and so when you make bad picks compounded with bad beats, that's what you get. There was a real bad beat in the NFL too, but before we get to that, the big news Sunday, of course, we talked about it. Ed Ogeron on his way out at LSU, a unique deal that they made that he will coach the rest of the season, but it's already been agreed upon. Hey, we're going to pay you $17 million to go away after this season. I'll sign for that. $17 million to not work next year. But that's all settled. LSU made the official announcement last night. Everything is going to be done at the end of the year. So now the question becomes at LSU, what's next? Or more specifically, who is next? So who the next LSU coach will be? Well, sportsbooks are a little bit reluctant to put odds out on this, especially domestic ones, because you can get people with insider info and it's hard to put odds and stuff. But there is an offshore sportsbook, sportsbetting.ag. I believe the AG stands for Antigua. So they're offshore, out of the country. And they put odds out for who will be the next LSU coach. And Lane Kiffin is your favorite at 3-1, followed by Luke Fickell, and then kind of a potpourri after that. But I will say that just in the couple of hours since this came out, guys, these odds have changed because I checked them right before the show, and your new favorite is Mel Tucker at 2-1. So some money is coming in on Mel Tucker. But Jim, when you look at this list, what sticks out to you?
Well, a shameless plug for the Datitude podcast on Monday. Jeff Duncan and I spend a lot of time talking about this, and it's not going to be Lane Kiffin. I mean, it just won't be. I don't think he's a good fit for LSU, but I do like the three after him. I think all have excellent chances of being in the running. Will Luke Fickell want to leave? Dunk points out, will Luke Fickell want to leave Cincinnati? Because he may have A, his eyes on the NFL, and B, if he's going to stay in college a little bit longer, Cincinnati could certainly be power for the next couple of years. And I say use power as a relative term. But so I think James Franklin and Mel Tucker have to be the favorites considered. My only question with Mel Tucker is that the kind of Scott Woodward hire that would make the splash that he likes to make. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Mel Tucker is ready for this. So if I'm going to pick one of those guys, I'm probably going to pick James Franklin. That's not who I would personally pick. Probably for me, that would probably be my second choice. Joe Brady would be my first choice because I think that the chance to lure Arch Manning would hinge on getting an offensive coach, which could change your program once again. And James Franklin is an outstanding coach, and I think he would be a great fit at LSU. So I wouldn't be upset at all if he was the choice. But I really think they need an offensive-minded coach, and I like the young. Joe Brady would certainly be splashy, a young guy that would bring energy into the program, and I think would help in the recruiting aspect of all those things. But lastly, on all this too, Zach, you got to think, just watching the interviews yesterday, you got to think Coach O not only knew it was coming, but I think he's relieved that was over. I don't think he would have wanted to stay. I mean, obviously he wants that money, so he wasn't going to quit without a buyout. But you got to think, okay, I was in over my head. This wasn't a job for me. I can go take $16.5 million to the bank and go have fun.
I don't know if it's that he thought he was over his head or if it's like, at some point, man, I won a national championship 2 years ago. And people are already out there with pitchforks and torches trying to run me out of town. And like, look, Ed Ogeron knows as well as anybody the last 2 years have not been up to expectations. But it used to be if you won a national title, you had a few years of leeway. You could have a couple of down years, and then as long as you built it back up, you were doing okay. So I think at some point you get tired of the constant expectations, especially considering the injuries they've had. I mean, you look at the number of players they've lost or had opt out over the last 2 years. You could fill an NFL team with those players. I mean, so it's a tough job. It's the expectations are ridiculously high, and Scott Woodward wants his own guy in there. And if Ed Ogeron is chafing with his new boss, and these expectations are there, and he's struggling, then yeah, maybe it was a relief to be out. Put the odds back up one more time, Devin. Tell us. I do think Jim brings up an interesting point. Joe Brady or Dave Aranda, the two coordinators for the national championship team, are both sort of worthwhile long shots in my eyes there.
Yeah, they're two very interesting names. I think it's probably going to ultimately come down to a big name. I think LSU wants to make that splash hire, and Joe Brady's his name has come up for NFL jobs, NFL head coaching jobs as well. So I think it will be hard to convince him to come back to the college level and run a program. Obviously, there's been people out there saying he's not really into recruiting, et cetera, like that. But I think he's probably comfortable right now with where he is in the NFL. So I will think that will be a long shot. And then Dave Aranda, I think he's a solid candidate and someone that I think is probably highly regarded by the program. I just don't know if that's the direction they want to go into. They may be wanting to look down a different path of actually have an offensive-minded head coach. Obviously the defense is, or most of the time it's defensive-minded coaches that have been LSU's head coach. So I think names like James Franklin will be very interesting. Maybe Luke Fickell, but I don't know if he's wanting to even leave Cincinnati for where he is right now, because they're heading to the Big 12 in a few years. But yeah, I think it'll probably be like Franklin. Mel Tucker will be in the mix as well. He's done a really great job at Michigan State turning them around after I think a 500 season last year. But I think Franklin or Mel Tucker will probably be my pick.
Yeah, I don't know that Mel Tucker is the splashy hire like Jim mentioned. He also left Colorado after I think 2 seasons, and this would be leaving Michigan State after 2 seasons. So now you don't really leave LSU after 2 seasons as long as you're doing a good job. So maybe he would stick around for a while, but you do start to wonder a guy, he gets happy feet and isn't a long-term solution. I don't know. But it's interesting. We will follow this as we go. We'll have odds updated from time to time. And right now, like I said, Lane Kiffin was the favorite when this sportsbook first made these odds available. The name makes sense for a lot of reasons, but I agree with you, Jim. I just don't think it'll ultimately be Kiffin because honestly, for one reason, there's a big connection to Coach O there, and I don't think they want to go that direction. I mean, he's coached with Orgeron at Tennessee and USC, so I don't know that they would want to go that direction. But we will track it. And now Mel Tucker, the favorite in the afternoon. So let's switch gears to the NFL for a few minutes. We will get back to college football toward the end of the show. But the weekend results in the NFL. Thursday night football, the Bucs held off the Eagles, but that's a cover for the underdog. A couple of games worth mentioning from Sunday. The Ravens just absolutely annihilated the Chargers. I know some people like the Ravens. They were favored. I did not see that coming. Also, the Browns are injured. I didn't see them losing by 23. And then, Jim, the bad beat of the week in the NFL came in New England.
And it wasn't the bad beat. It was a microcosm of my entire betting season. Everything that you basically needed one out of like 7 things to happen, and none of them happened. I mean, the Patriots, the only thing they can't do they're up by 1. So the only thing they can't do at the end of the fourth quarter is throw a pick 6 or have a turnover that's returned to the house. So what do they do? They throw a pick 6, but then they come back and score. Don't get the 2-point conversion. We don't want overtime. They get the 2-point conversion. It goes into overtime. Patriots get the ball first. Okay, you're safe because if Dallas, they don't score and Dallas gets the ball, they're just going to kick a field goal. Well, Patriots don't score, and CeeDee Lamb is still waving bye-bye, and that was waving bye-bye my money.
Yeah, because you think in that situation, they're going to settle for the field goal, and you'll at least cover the 3.5 or 4.5, I think is what we had it at. But it was just it was bad.
And you know what made me scared about the whole thing, too, is that Tony Romo basically called the play like 2 or 3 plays before it happened. And I'm thinking, oh, my God. And he's always look, Tony Romo is outstanding as a color analyst. He might not have been the greatest quarterback on the planet. He wasn't bad. But this dude can call plays, and especially when it's Dallas. He had it right on the money. They're going to go for the big play. And sure enough, he was right. They did. And Cowboys cover. And it hurt. It stung a little bit.
Yeah, Tony Romo would be a good guy to have next to you in a sports book on a Sunday, so you can make some live bets. What sticks out to you here from this NFL slate, Devin?
I talked to you a little bit beforehand, but I didn't expect the Ravens to dominate the Chargers like they did. You know, the Ravens defense has kind of been up and down all season long. Chargers offense has been unstoppable, and Justin Herbert has played fantastic, but none of that happened yesterday. The Ravens defense was able to shut down Herbert and the offense all day long, got pressure on him, forced a few turnovers, and just ran the football really well. So I thought it was going to be a shootout, you know, with the Chargers maybe pulling it out in the end. It was pretty much the opposite. So that was probably my biggest takeaway from yesterday. I figured the Cardinals were going to win. I didn't expect them to win that big, but they controlled that game from the start of the game.
And some red flags for the Browns, too. Baker Mayfield has a separated shoulder, says he's going to try to play through it, but Nick Chubb is hurt. I mean, they've got some linemen hurt.
Graham Hunt's hurt, too.
Yeah, they've got some issues in Cleveland after what was a pretty good start to the season. NFL wraps up tonight with Monday Night Football, as always, and they are in Nashville tonight. Bills at Titans. The line has ticked up to 6. Jim, you're all over the Titans in this game.
I have been from the start. I knew the line was going to keep moving up because Aunt Mabel and Drunk Joe and everybody else on the planet loves the Bills. The only people I see taking the Titans are some sharps. I read something yesterday on our newsletter that we get from Caesars that 97% of the money as of yesterday morning, 97%, I have never seen that number. 97% of the money is on the Bills, and they don't lose like that. So I think it's a great spot for the Titans. I didn't just like the Titans to spread. I like the Titans money line as well. I think the Titans have an excellent chance to win here. The Bills are going in their bye. You would think that teams going in their bye are especially good teams going in their bye are going to be more focused, but really they're more ready to take a week off. And if you look at past history, the past decade or so, it's about 50-50. So I just think Tennessee's in a great spot here. Look, their schedule doesn't get any easier. They're going to play Kansas City next week. So they're going to be super focused, and they're going to be ready to make a splash on Monday Night Football to show the world that they're better than most of the experts think they are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if 97% of the money is on Buffalo. That means it's public money and sharp money, right? I mean, if everybody's money is over there, but you're right. The books aren't going to hang a line that they know they're going to get killed on. So maybe they know something. The other factor here is I just think it's a good matchup for Tennessee. These teams played last year. You mentioned this in your picks column. Buffalo had trouble stopping Derrick Henry. They fell behind. Josh Allen, a couple of turnovers. He kind of turned into that rogue gunslinger Josh Allen where he kind of gets himself in trouble a little bit. He doesn't do that as much anymore. So we'll see. But you're right. I mean, it's a spot where the Bills are riding high. And for Tennessee, this is a bigger game than it is for Buffalo. And they're at home. And so I'm kind of leaning Tennessee myself. Devin, what are you thinking?
I still think I like Buffalo in this game. I know Tennessee, has played Buffalo really well over the last couple of seasons, and I know the line favors Tennessee, and everyone's betting on the Bills, but I think the Bills have kind of figured out how to be consistent week in and week out. I think after that Week 1 performance against Pittsburgh, that was kind of a wake up call for them, and they're playing some of the best offense that we've seen this season. And I'm worried about Tennessee's defense. I just worry about their secondary. It's very young and very inexperienced, and they've given up big points to like the Jets and a bunch of other teams as well. Seattle in that first half before they shut down the second half. So I think Buffalo finds a way to win this game. I think it's going to be a good matchup between these two teams and probably come down to the wire, but I think Buffalo pulls it out still.
Yeah, and the total's 54. It's supposed to be a high-scoring game. So obviously, if Buffalo is hitting on all cylinders, it is going to be tough for Tennessee. So that is the bet we're making tonight. By the way, the NBA starts tomorrow, and we didn't put up any slides on it. The Coach O news kind of took the place of that, but I did want to talk a little bit about the NBA. First of all, guys, the Pelicans don't open up till Wednesday. At Caesars Sportsbook, they are minus 175 to miss the playoffs, plus 150 to make the playoffs. So a little bit of juice toward the no. Zion is out. We're not sure for how long. He's going to miss the beginning of the season. Devin, yes or no, put you on the spot, Pelicans make the playoffs?
No.
Jim?
I just think Jim, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Expand, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Devin. We'll get to Jim in a minute.
I don't think Zion is going to come back that soon, and I'm just worried about the youth of that team. Like they have Brandon Ingram, they upgrade in some other places, but the West is just so tough, and it continues to get more and more tough every year. The Warriors are going to be better this year. The Lakers, obviously, are going to be much better. They're not going to be a bottom seed, more than likely. And just the depth of the West, to me, I think that keeps them out of the playoffs more than the Pelicans getting in their own way. And I think they just miss out.
Jim, how about you? Yes or no?
They're not going to make the playoffs, but I think a better bet is the last I saw, I think the over-under on win totals was at 39.5. I think a way better bet than making the playoffs, because as well as I do with the expanded playoffs, fluky things happen, and you can make the playoffs with 38 wins or something like that. I don't think it'll happen in the West, but it could. I think a much better bet is the under on the win total. I don't see how this team wins 40 games. I just don't. And I think this Zion injury, we've seen this script before, right? I think it's way worse. Obviously, they didn't spring it on the media until media day. And then it was like he might play in the opener. And now it's looking like, I think if he plays by Christmas, that might be an upset. It's getting crazy. So I don't think it's going to be a distraction as well. And it's a shame because I really like Willie Green. I think he's coming into a S is the best way to put it. But I think this team could have early season struggles, which would lead to a really bad record.
I'll be contrarian a little bit there, guys. I put it this way. If Zion was playing and we knew he was healthy, I love getting plus 150 on the playoffs. I love over 39.5. I think they finally figured out how to construct this team. And that is you let Zion be the monster in the paint and you surround him with shooters. And that's finally what they've done. Trey Murphy is going to have a good rookie year. Devontae Graham, 3-point shooter. Jonas Valanciunas, 3-point shooter. Brandon Ingram, we know, can shoot. This is the way you play with Zion. And so I won't bet it just because of the uncertainty around Zion, and I think that changes the equation. But they also lost a ton of close games last year, and they were still 500 with about 5 games to go, and then they lost. They went on a losing streak to end the season without Zion. But if Zion's healthy,
Devin, I think we might have lost Zach, but what he's saying is if Zion's healthy, but that's the big if, right, Devin? I mean, big if. We don't know when he's going to be healthy. I mean, we've played this game before. Go ahead, Zach. You can finish expanding on what you were talking about.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a gamble to kind of bet on the Pelicans because you don't know when Zion's coming back, and unfortunately for NBA players, we've seen players deal with injuries a ton. I mean, Anthony Davis, when he played for the Pelicans, he had a ton of injury issues. So
Anthony Davis, when he played with the Lakers,
I mean, he's been injured there as well. So it's a wild card, and it's going to take him a while to kind of get back acclimated, and they're probably going to put a minutes restriction on him when he comes back, and that's going to limit the ability for them to win games at the end. So it's a whole ordeal with dealing with his injuries because it's starting to get lengthy now.
I'm sorry, guys. I had a connection issue there. But, yeah, I mean, I think, again, I'm not going to bet it because we don't know about Zion. But I do like it if Zion's there. I will say this, though. The Pelicans and David Griffin in particular have done just a terrible job of communication. It's just awful. I don't think Zion likes it there because they're not straight up with him. They're not straight up with the media. If the guy's hurt, he's hurt. Tell us he's hurt.
Right.
Tell everybody he's hurt. What is up with this? Oh, we'll let you know in a couple of days. Okay, we'll have an update next week. Oh, we're not sure. He's going to take the next step. Everywhere else in sports, you get a timeline. He's out 6 to 8 weeks. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. Okay, we understand that the public is smart enough to realize that it might be, when you say 4 to 6 weeks, that means it might only be 3 weeks and it might also be 7 weeks. We understand these timelines are fluid. Just be honest. Just be honest. And that's my biggest problem, and that's why I would stay away from it. I was optimistic about the Pelicans. This whole Zion thing, I'm staying away. But if he is playing by Christmas, like you said, Jim, and maybe that's optimistic, if he's playing by Christmas, I think they have a shot at making a playoff run and at least being a 500 team.
One short take, it's because the NBA doesn't hold teams accountable on reporting injuries like the NFL does. And in baseball, if somebody's hurt, you got to put them on the IL, so you have to be transparent. So, but the NFL is very, very good about forcing teams to disclose injuries, and it's something the NBA doesn't do and needs to do.
Yeah, and especially, again, this has been the theme today, but with sports betting becoming more popular, you've got to let people know when people are hurt and how long they're going to be out for. And frankly, the Pelicans have just totally disappointed everyone in this respect. Be honest. And if you don't know, I mean, I don't know what that says about your training staff, but say you don't know.
I agree.
One more quick one on the NBA. Give me in 30 seconds or less. I'll list the odds real quick, and then Devin and Jim, you tell me who you like from this list for value to win the NBA title. The Brooklyn Nets are plus 230. They're the favorite, even with all the Kyrie stuff. Lakers plus 400. Bucks, defending champs, plus 800. The Warriors are 10-1. The Suns and Jazz 15-1. And then the Clippers and Sixers 18-1. Devin, who do you like to win the NBA title?
This might come as a shock, but I like the Bucks plus 800. Is the best value. The thing is, like, the Nets are a wild card because we don't know if Kyrie's ever even going to play this year. And we saw what happened last in the playoffs. I mean, I know the Bucks had to beat them in Game 7, but the Bucks seem like they've turned that corner. They kind of gotten over that hump of losing in the second round, losing in the first round, and made to the finals, and obviously won the chip. And Giannis seems like he's adding a jump shot now to his arsenal. So I think the Bucks are even more dangerous than they were last year, and I like them to potentially come out the East, assuming Kyrie Irving isn't back for the Nets, and I could see them being the Lakers team potentially in the finals.
It's funny when the Kyrie vaccine news came out, the Nets odds didn't change very much because Durant and Harden is still a heck of a duo. That's going to be tough to beat. Jim, where are you going?
I mean, I hate to be boring, but I agree 100% with Devin. I think the Bucks are the best money. I mean, the defending champs are plus 800. Why? Because everybody loves the Nets. I don't know. Everybody loves the Lakers. I don't know. But I also like Golden State at, what do you say, plus 1,500?
It's plus 1,000 for Golden State.
Plus 1,000. I mean, they seem to be getting back on track, and I think their projected win total, the last I heard, was somewhere in the ballpark of 50. So obviously, people think they're going to, the people who make those lines think they're going to be pretty darn good. So those are the two teams I will probably plunk a little bit on. And there are a lot of unders among those big name teams I'm going to be betting on as well. And when it comes to win totals, Lakers and Nets, I love unders on those guys. They're jacked up way too high.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially on the Lakers, I love the under on the Lakers because even if it does work with Westbrook and LeBron and AD, they're going to rest those guys every other night, and they're just not going to win. What is it, 54? They're not going to win that many games.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'll give you a long shot pick for my NBA finals pick. In fact, I'll give you two: the Suns at 15-1, and the Clippers at 18-1. And the Clippers are, they don't have Kawhi for most of the season. But by playoff time, it's possible he's back. And at 18-1, that's enough value for me. Even if they get in as the 6 or the 7 seed, you're telling me with Kawhi, with a fully healthy Kawhi and Paul George, they can't knock somebody off who's like the 3 seed and make this happen? I mean, 18-1 seems like a lot of value on the Clippers there if they can get fully healthy. And that's really what you're betting on there. Okay, moving on. We'll circle back to college football. And I wanted to look at the national title odds because they changed so much this past week before we look at this coming week's odds. Georgia, obviously, still the favorite. It's interesting, though, the next two are Alabama and Ohio State, who each have a loss, meaning that the folks at Caesar Sportsbook think if they win out, they're still in the playoff and they're still going to be in good shape to win. And then the other one I'll point out is Cincinnati, not even in the top 4. They're number 2 in the country, not in the top 4. If the Bearcats go undefeated and they don't put them in the playoff, they need to expand that thing immediately because what else are they supposed to do? They scheduled Indiana at Indiana, 1. They scheduled Notre Dame at Notre Dame, 1. They're going to win the rest of their games. What are you supposed to do if you're Cincinnati?
Become a big name team and generate money for the NCAA. That's what it's about, money. I mean, look, I will say this, though, about Cincinnati. I think if I had to put odds, I think the price is super low on Georgia. Even at plus 125, I think that is super low. Now is the time to buy Georgia because there is zero question they're going to the playoffs. And they're probably going to get someone in the first round that they should be able to beat easy, like LSU's done and Alabama's done in the past. So
might be Cincinnati.
It could be, but I will say this also to your Cincinnati that I will say that Cincinnati is an outstanding bet at 2,500. That seems absurd to me. I mean, do I think they have a real chance to win the national championship? Probably not. But at 25-1, I think there's at least the 60 to 70% chance they're going to get in the playoffs. Because I think these other,
I don't know about that.
It's a stinky poo year. I mean, these other teams, it does come down to money. But I think there's a good chance that Oklahoma loses again. I think there's a good chance Ohio State loses. So where are we going with this? I mean, Alabama, if they make it to the SEC championship game, they're going to lose to Georgia again. So I think at 25-1, that is an outstanding line. I don't necessarily think they're going to win the national championship, but if you want to plop down $20 to win 500, I think that's an excellent get.
I mean, Cincinnati's not 100% to win out either. That's part of that. They could still slip up somewhere, but even if they win out, I'm not sure they're better than 60 to 70% to make the playoff.
They're going to lose there.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, then they're going to be double-digit underdogs in the semifinal, and then if they happen to win that, they'd be double-digit underdogs in the final. So it's a tough road for sure. Devin, when you look at this list, what sticks out to you?
I'm surprised at Michigan's odds. I I just know that they are in for a letdown, and it just seems inevitable every year that Michigan is going well. They're winning games on the road. Winning tough environment games. It comes to the end of the season, they got to play Ohio State, and if they don't keep that one close, I mean, I don't even know if they're considered to make the playoff, even with that just one loss to Ohio State. So that one is kind of interesting to me because they're going to have an interesting last month of the season playing Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State. So you expect them to lose at least one of those games. But I just don't know how I don't know if I see them as a national championship type team. I mean, I just don't see it with them. So that's an interesting one to watch, I think, because I mean, one of these Big Ten teams are going to just fall off. I mean, between Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State, just in the Big Ten East.
Yeah, so they'll beat each other up.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that.
I mean, they are 40-1, so I don't know if I say they're in contention, but it's interesting. You talk about that schedule. If they were to drop one of those games to Penn State or Michigan State, but then turn around and beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten, I think they still get in the playoff at that point. I don't know that they could win it, but that's an interesting team to keep an eye on. You're right. You
One
see
last thing, Zach,
Jim,
before you move on, I want to ask, can we finally stop? I mean, I ask this question every year at this time, but can we finally just stop thinking the Big Ten is any good? I mean, Iowa, I mean, you lose to Purdue. I mean, they were the number 2 team in the country. We all knew they weren't the second best team in the country, but you lose to Purdue and handily. The Big Ten is not good, and we keep putting them in the playoff, and it no matter. I mean, Ohio State, why are they plus 800? Why are they a sure thing to almost to make the playoff? I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's.
I mean, to your point. To your point, though, I think Cincinnati should be in if they win out.
No, they should. So there's no question about it.
100% should. But when we talked before, it makes it sound like I don't think they should be in there. They should be in there, but I can't stand the way they pick the teams for the playoffs.
I know, and that's why you need more teams.
It's absurd.
I mean, especially if Notre Dame goes 10-2 or 11-1, and Cincinnati is one of those losses, you got to put them in. Put them in. I don't understand why you. I mean, I do, because you're right. It's TV money. But at some point, people want to watch new blood take their shot. And by the way, Georgia and Cincinnati played last year in, what was it, the Peach Bowl? And it was a heck of a game. It was a heck of a game. And I don't know if it'll be the same this year, but it's not like they can't compete. So put them in. It's interesting. The bottom of that list, one of the teams there, still undefeated, Oklahoma State. Let's look at this week's lines, because this is the one that sticks out to me as we look ahead at the Week 8 college football lines. Oklahoma State is getting a touchdown as the undefeated team in the top 10 at Iowa State. The Cyclones are laying 7 points.
Iowa State is another team, not very good. I don't think, and Devin would be better to talk about this than I would, but I don't get that line at all. It's probably when I don't get lines, they either bet on the team that it doesn't make sense to bet on, or, I mean, like in this case, Iowa State. But it's probably one I would stay away from. But that line makes 0 sense to me.
Yeah, this is just like the Iowa State-Iowa game earlier this season. Iowa State was favored as home,
right?
Home favorites. They were home favorites against Iowa, and they clearly weren't the better team. I'm not sure. I mean, this is the second week in a row Oklahoma State is underdogs, and they're the higher ranked team and clearly the better team. So the books just don't like Oklahoma State, I guess. The way they're winning, because they're very winning. They're winning very unconventional. Like, they're running the ball a lot and playing some timely defense. So
yeah, it reminds me of Iowa a little bit.
Yeah, similar to Iowa, but I mean, I think Oklahoma State, I mean, they can create big plays. Like, their offense isn't like completely bad. So,
Zach, why is Oregon a favorite? I mean, Oregon an underdog against UCLA. I don't get that.
That's another one. You got 2 top 10 teams. Oregon might be like 11th or 12th, but two national title contenders going on the road and getting points this weekend. It's really kind of surprising. So, and then you see Ole Miss favored by 9.5 over LSU. I'll tell you what, LSU is not a team these teams want to play. for the rest of the season. I think they're dangerous. I think Coach Ogeron's got nothing to lose now.
They are going to get destroyed this week. They're going to. I mean, you can book it. They're going to lose by at least 3 touchdowns. At the minimum, 3 touchdowns. It's going to be ugly.
Well, Matt Corral's
questionable
to play.
Yeah.
So that
I don't care who plays for Ole Miss.
Wow.
I don't. I just don't. They got what they wanted to get last week. Lane Kiffin, there's a couple things people don't realize. Again, another thing we talk about on the podcast today, and it's that this isn't a big rivalry for LSU fans. LSU doesn't care about this anymore. It used to be a big deal back in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. But Ole Miss, they hate LSU. Lane Kiffin knows this. Lane Kiffin is going to use every opportunity he can to light up the scoreboard, no matter who's in there. And LSU is not going to be able to stop. Look, Florida's quarterbacks are terrible. I mean, they really are. The two-headed monsters they have. I don't care who's playing quarterback for Ole Miss. Go get the 9.5 or 10 right now before that goes up, because that's going to be 12 or so by game time. And
not if Matt Corral's out, it won't. If Matt Corral's out, it might go the other way.
Okay, well, plop your money on Ole Miss any kind of way you can, because I'm telling you right now, Lane Kiffin's going to be waiting to feast on a 60 burger by the time this one's over.
Wow. Strong words from Jim Derry. And honestly, to Devin's point, I think Matt Corral will play. I think Lane Kiffin's, he's beat up. He might not play. That's a smokescreen. He's going to play. NFL odds before we go for next week. Again, we got Bills and Titans tonight, but in the NFL, the Saints are back in action not until next Monday, and they're laying 5 in Seattle against Geno Smith and the boys. Chiefs are also road favorites in Tennessee. That's a line that could change depending on what the Titans do tonight. And then 3 home favorites. That last game, Sunday Night Football, kind of interesting because the loser of that is going to be staring at a very tall order to make the playoffs. And those are a couple teams people thought were playoff teams at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I just posted actually the entire list of lines, so people can go on to bet.NOLA.com and check them out. They have some interesting lines. Lots of double-digit favorites this week, including Arizona as a 17-point favorite over Houston. Did you ever think you'd see Arizona as a 17-point favorite for anyone? I didn't. But, the one that sticks out to me is I get that the Ravens had a good game this week, and maybe the Chargers were a little overvalued, including by me. But I still don't think the Ravens are that great of a football team. And the Bengals get zero love. I was listening to a show, a guy I really respect. He was talking about his power ratings and where to figure out everybody. And before the game, this was before yesterday, but he's got Cincinnati as his number 22 team in the NFL. That makes no sense. Anyone who has Cincinnati as their number 22 team has not paid enough attention. This is a top 12 or 14 team, maybe higher than that. And I think by year's end, they certainly will be. Their defense is playing pretty well. And I know Jared Goff has nothing to write home about. It's easy to stop him. But, man, this may end up being my pick of the week, especially if it goes up, because I think the betting public will be on Baltimore. I think you could get the full touchdown there maybe in a few days. Cincinnati is way better than people give them credit for.
Bengals won at Pittsburgh. Could they win at Baltimore too? That'd be quite a double for that franchise. Devin, what sticks out to you about NFL Week 7 slate there?
Definitely. Let me pull back up the line. I would say probably the Ravens-Bengals. I think Bengals are much closer than what that line suggests. They played everyone they've played this year tough. I mean, even with the loss to like the Vikings, it just came down to field goal kicking. And then that Colts 49ers game is going to be interesting just because, like you mentioned, Zach, both teams are on the outside looking in right now in their division. I mean, the NFC West is if 49ers lose this game, I mean, they may be already out of contention to win the division. I mean, not saying they were going to anyway, but I mean, you had the 6-0 Cardinals, the 5-1 Rams, and now you're potentially going to be at 2-4. I mean, that's a tough climb. And then the Colts, they're looking much better these weeks. Last 2 weeks they played well, even with that loss to the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Carson Wentz looks pretty good too. So I think those two teams are going to be battling it out. And the Colts win. I mean, they're still alive in the AFC South.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we didn't talk a lot about the Saints this week, but you can certainly check out Jim's Datitude podcast for that. He had Jeff Duncan on, and haven't listened to it yet, Jim, but you said it was a pretty good conversation.
It is indeed, and he talks about the injuries and when he thinks that a lot of these players are coming back. It's pretty insightful, as Jeff Duncan always is. But we spend about the first 30 minutes or so talking about the LSU situation, and then 20 minutes or so on the Saints. And, Jeff, ever the optimist, thinks that this could be a nice little run coming up. I worry that what's going to scare me about this week, and I haven't made my pick yet, but what scares me about the Saints Seahawks this week is you got Tampa Bay on a short week at home afterwards, and Jeff even says so. You know that they spent part of the practice week, and they will spend part of the practice week probably this week, planning on Tampa Bay. And you cannot overlook Seattle. They played with a lot of heart last night against Pittsburgh, nearly pulled one out. Smith looked terrible the first half, but he came out in the second half and played a lot better. And they've suddenly found the running game. I'm not sure if Chris Carson's going to be back or not, but
no, he's on IR, so he's
okay.
Out.
There you go.
But Alex Collins ran for 100 yards last night. So
yeah, exactly. So this game really scares me. I hate the word the term trap game, but you can't look ahead to Tampa Bay without beating Seattle because it goes for naught. It's another must win, because if they want to win the division, I think they need this one and Tampa Bay to get themselves back in the hunt.
Yeah, and it's interesting, that Tampa Bay game. I mean, it's an old adage in the NFL. The most important games on your schedule are your home division games. You got to win your home division games. And Tampa Bay is the defending Super Bowl champions. They're the favorite to win the division. If the Saints lose that game, they're not winning the division. I think we can say that.
That's right.
But as you say, if they put all their eggs in that basket and lose to Seattle and then come back on a short week, you're probably not winning the division anyway. So it's a tricky turnaround for the Saints. I'm sure they would have preferred to have their bye week between these two games instead of before them, but that's how the chips fell. So, hey, it's been another great episode of Odds and Ends. We talked college football, we talked Coach O and what's next for LSU, we talked NFL, talked NBA. You can catch the whole thing on demand at bet.NOLA.com. Also, check out Tuesday afternoon the Fantasy Roundup with myself and Spencer Urquhart, the Datitude podcast with Jim Derry every Tuesday and Friday, and the At the Book show to preview the weekend. We three will be back with you on Thursday for At the Book. So until then, for Devin Jackson and Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. We'll see you next time on Odds and Ends.